In their 2019 manifesto, the Conservatives promised to use Brexit freedoms to level up every part of the country. 4 years on, have they? Tonight, we're in the South Yorkshire city of Doncaster. It's the home of the St Leger, the oldest classic horse race, and it only achieved official city status last year. And the people here also want to talk about migration numbers. Are they too high? And we have a very impassioned debate about Gaza. And our audience here, as always, reflects the overall electoral picture across the nation. Welcome to Question Time. On tonight's panel, Esther McVey is a recently appointed Cabinet Minister. The MP for Tatton had a previous career in television, most notably presenting GMTV. After various jobs inside and outside government, she's now in a role dubbed Minister for Common Sense. Steve Reid is Labour's Shadow Secretary for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. The MP for Croydon North has been in Parliament for over a decade, having previously been leader of Lambeth Council in London. Layla Moran is one of the 15 Liberal Democrat MPs in the Commons. She's of Palestinian descent and has extended family in Gaza. Having run for her party's leadership in 2019, she now speaks for her party on foreign affairs. The comedian Zoe Lyons was born in Wales, spent most of her childhood in Ireland, moved to Scotland and now lives in southern England. She appears on a variety of comedy and current affairs panel shows and just about survived the reality show SAS Who Dares Wins alongside Matt Hancock. And it's Happy St Andrew's Day to Andrew Neil. He edited the Sunday Times for over a decade and was founding chairman of Sky TV before a long stint at the BBC, where he built a formidable reputation for skewering politicians. He chairs The Spectator magazine and writes for the Daily Mail. Good evening. Welcome to our panel. Welcome to our audience here in Doncaster. Great to see you. And, of course, welcome to you at home. You can watch or listen to the programme on iPlayer or BBC Sound at a time of your choosing. But let's get started right now with our first question. And, as I say often on this programme, the panel do not know what the questions are. So let's hear it from Colin Wallace.
Hi, good evening. Up here, our cities are like ghost towns. There's empty buildings everywhere, the businesses are really struggling and it can feel unsafe when you're out and about. How are you actually going to level up in the north?
Esther.
Well, I think after lockdown and after COVID, there's definitely been upheaval and it's been tough for businesses. So we have got the levelling up agenda. Billions of pounds has come to Doncaster, or millions, I should say, in the levelling up fund and the towns fund. And that's really important that we do support our businesses. They are the energy of the economy. And for me, I was pleased with the autumn statement that the Chancellor said, we're going to do the biggest tax breaks in 50 years and we're going to support our businesses, because that is what we've got to do, particularly coming out of what has only been a terrible time for business with lockdown, COVID lockdown.
Colin, you asked this question. How does it feel to you?
It feels terrible. You just have to look around the high street. You've got Wilko's that's gone, you've had Debenhams gone, you've had multiple retailers, and those shop places are still empty and nothing seems to be happening. So
the money that's come from government, I think in total so far from various different funds, not just the Levelling Up Fund, it's just over 60 million. Do you feel that's made a difference?
I don't think so. Things seem to be getting worse and nothing seems to be happening up in the north. The money still seems to be getting spent in the south.
Steve?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because in 2019, when this government was first elected, levelling up was supposed to be their big idea. And admittedly, look at what they've been doing before that. They'd hardly levelled the country up, had they?
Well, Boris Johnson defined it as his defining mission.
He did define it. That's exactly what he called it. But what they've done since then is the polar opposite of that. You were talking about 60 million may have come to this area through pots of money from levelling up, but over 106 million has been taken away. So they're £40 million worse off.
Taken away what in terms of the local council,
in terms of local council funding. If you added in all the other ways in which money would have been taken away, it would be even more than that. So this Doncaster has been losing money for 14 years, the whole time that this Conservative government has been in place. And if they then give you a little back of the money that they took away, you're not better off. You're still worse off. And to make matters even more offensive to people in places like Doncaster, if you remember in the summer, we had Rishi Sunak standing in a very well-heeled garden down in Tunbridge Wells, bragging about the fact that he had taken monies away from places like Doncaster and funneled it instead into far wealthier parts of the country. This government does not have any interest at all in levelling up this country.
They've been
pulling this country apart. Now, let me tell you how we should.
Let me tell you,
I'm sure you'll get Esther a chance to come in. I'm sure you're going to get a chance to come in.
I'll let you come in a second.
I was just going to say what I think we should be doing. You shouldn't be taking money away from places like Doncaster and giving it to better off parts of the country. What we need to do is open up opportunity to every single part of the country. And one of the ways that we can do that is to get ahead with Labour's Green Prosperity Plan, plans for new towns, investing in the good, clean, new jobs, digital jobs of the future, giving local areas the power they need to choose the skills that they want their local people to be able to trade up in so they can access those jobs. Then they've got the secure incomes. They're not dependent on handouts from Whitehall. And we can give places like Doncaster and other towns across the country back their sense of self-reliance and pride, which this government's taken away from them.
And for the people here in the audience, because this was more of you asked a question about levelling up than anything else, how long do you think, if you were to win the next general election, how long do you think the people here would have to wait before they felt the effects of that?
Well, you know, we've had 14 years of a Conservative government.
I accept that, but just to give people an idea.
It's not going to be overnight. But what Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor...
Within the first Parliament, do you think people should begin to feel the effects of that?
Absolutely within the first Parliament. Absolutely we should.
Esther, you want to come in quickly before I go to the audience?
Yeah, it's just a misrepresentation, because what they were doing, even in, I should say, affluent areas, there will be poor areas, and that investment was going into those areas too, which is important. But what we'd say is we need business investment. We need investment coming in, and that's actually now what we're starting to do. So you're actually saying this year growth in the UK was the fastest in Europe. You're actually saying that the UK now is #1 for investment into new projects. That's coming in. Like I said, it's been a tough time with COVID and lockdown, but actually we are getting the economy going, and that is what is important.
OK, lots of hands up. Let's hear from somebody. Man here at the front in the blue shirt and jacket.
Hi, yeah. Just to back up the gentleman about levelling up, when is the government going to commit and support the reopening of Doncaster Sheffield Airport?
All right. I will come back to you with your answer on that. I'm just going to go round the audience a little bit more first, but I hear you. I will get that question answered. Yes, woman in the back in the stripy top.
I just wondered whether it tells us something that the Tory party need a Minister for Common Sense.
What is a Minister for Common Sense, Esther?
Well, you'll have read the reports like me. It seemed that in the media I was dubbed as the Minister of Common Sense, but you actually will know, Fiona, what my role is, which is Minister in the Cabinet Office. It's known as without portfolio, which means that you work across portfolio. So it is about scrutiny, it's about oversight, it's making sure there is delivery for money. Ken Clarke held the position, Peter Mandelson has held the position.
Is the whole common sense thing inaccurate, then?
I'll give you examples of common sense. So actually, I think it's sort of just a popular term. So here's what I guess Rishi, the Prime Minister, has done for common sense. People would have said, delay the ban in purchasing of diesel and petrol cars. You know, those net zero targets are, not practical enough.
He's done that already.
That's
so
right.
Why do you
we're
need you?
building upon it because there is more to do. We're talking about here how to get money into areas, how to get investment into areas. You're quite right. Robin Hood Airport, Doncaster Airport. This would be something really important locally. You've got two mayors here who should be fighting for it, like Ben Houchen did in Teesside, to get that airport back. So I think getting rid of HS2, that leg there from Birmingham to Manchester, was another bout of common sense to get that billions of pounds into local transport and the transport people want
just
locally.
just to be clear, because these are things that have happened already
yes,
before
right.
you were Minister for Common Sense. Now you are Minister for Common Sense. Is that suggesting that the ministers that are already doing their jobs in the various departments in Cabinet, they don't have enough common sense? So you've got to come in and display more common sense? I mean, literally, how does it work?
Yeah, they do have common sense, absolutely.
But just not quite enough.
No, but it is...
Is there a Minister for more common sense?
So, but it is bringing in a scrutiny. As I said, Peter Mandelson held the role for Labour.
But he wasn't called Minister for Common Sense.
That's right, because it has been given by yourself as well as a sort of a fun name, because people say, do politicians listen to what people need? Are they looking at those net zero targets? Actually, should we have delayed them because the infrastructure wasn't there? People would have been pushed into poverty. Labour wants to go even quicker with the net zero targets, as did the Lib Dem. So it is working on behalf of the people to bring pragmatism into politics.
I can understand, though, how being presented with a Minister of Common Sense is quite irksome. It does seem a bit irksome. All I can imagine in my head is that your office is beside the Minister of Funny Walks. It just seems... it's on that sort of level. It's...
No, you see, I think, as other people have held this role, it is important, because sometimes also government works in silos. You'll have individual departments working on things, and you need it that somebody can go across those departments, work with those departments. We were talking about this before, and you said how important that was, Layla.
Esther, I appreciate it. Listen, we've asked that question. We must let you answer, but I'm going to drag us back to levelling up. So we got slightly sidetracked by that. And we've answered your question about the airport. We've had an answer about the airport. You man there in the glass in the dark jacket.
We in the north feel like the forgotten souls. In the last 12 months, we've lost our airport here. We've had a failed bid for a hospital. We've had a failed British Rail headquarters bid go. 1,635 businesses failed last year, which was up 14.3% from the previous year. Half the town's empty. The hotels are all full of immigrants. It's a no-go area at times. And the divide between the north and south with levelling up it's a massive gap.
And can I ask you, do you think it is just a question of money coming from government, or do you think there's something else?
It's money from government, but it's also when councils receive money, how they distribute it and what they prioritise.
OK. Andrew?
I think the people of Doncaster are in a better position to tell us about levelling up than a panel that's come up from London. You're the people that learned. And from what I see, or what I've just heard, you're not happy. And you have every right to be not happy. I think levelling up was a wonderful idea. It's just a pity it was never implemented. Every country has regional disparities. Italy, Germany, France, Britain. Ours are wider than most. And if we could reduce them, we would add over 100 billion to British GDP. Everybody would benefit. Doncaster would benefit. Durham would benefit. The South would benefit. And there's so much that could have been done. And I don't know, Esther, that you could point to one metric that would show that levelling up has narrowed the gap between the North and the South. I don't know of one metric in which the North has benefited and come closer to the prosperity of the South. As a country, our wealth and power is overwhelmingly concentrated in the South, and it's to all of our disadvantages that should be the case. And there was so much that could have been done. For a start, the government could have designated 20 towns in the north, like Doncaster, and poured millions into them to regenerate the city centres again, to bring them back to life. The gentleman who asked the question mentioned how it was dead. It can be done. It's been done, funnily enough, in the south. Go down Marylebone High Street in London. It's totally regenerated, but not in Doncaster, not the Doncaster I came through. That could have been done. Instead of building HS2, you could have poured billions into proper transport links east and west to make Leeds and Manchester and Liverpool a single Labour conurbation with a labour force or a population of 10 million, which is the size of London. You're up there if you do that.
So that actually is what Rishi is now doing, which is important.
You've been in power for 4 years. How much do you need?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Let me just continue.
But Rishi
you could have
been.
designated the North has some of the finest universities in Europe. They could have been designated to work together as clusters for modern technology. There is 150,000, 200,000 actually now, shortage of people with STEM skills, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. The government could have designated elite STEM schools in every major northern town and city and given the young people of this region a real chance in the future of this world, a world-class education, German standards of engineering education. That would have brought up the living standards. There's so many things that could have been done that would have made a difference. And frankly, Esther, you, government, has done nothing.
In the north and in this area, going without levelling up is not anything new. And it's not just the Tory government that's failed to do that. It's previous Labour governments that have failed to do that. And wherever you go in this area, Doncaster, Sheffield, Rotherham, wherever you go, there are high streets that are crying out for money. When will somebody get real, future governments get real and sort this out?
Well,
because
I will say the Northern Powerhouse, and I will agree with everything that Andrew said there, is vital. I am actually from... No, listen, I am from...
You're just saying your government doesn't know anything about it.
No, hang on a sec. I am from the North, and I've always fought for the Northern Powerhouse. My husband is from Doncaster. I know this area very well. And I think that connection across the North was what I've been fighting for 7 years, but they were determined to do the South to the North. No, this is the start of that connection across the North, and those transport links will be vital to get that Northern Powerhouse.
Panel members, Zoe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a politician, I'm a comedian, which sometimes gets blurred, but... and my experience of coming up to Doncaster and areas around here, you know, I live in the South, and I come up to go on tours and travel around and do shows, and I find as soon as I get up to this part of the world, my heart goes out to you, how difficult it is to get anywhere. And it's a basic human right to be able to live in one place and work in another, to commute to a job, to generate wealth across the whole region, as we are saying. And I really do feel for you, but it's been going on for years and years and years and years. I mean, sometimes when I'm up in Yorkshire, I'm getting on a train, I'm like, is this a train or is it a bus that thinks it's a train? It is so confusing, and it's... If you had that ability to commute, to spread the wealth out, it would make such a huge difference to this part of the world.
Layla?
I'm from Oxfordshire, but that doesn't mean that because you're from the South, it's not in our interests that the North isn't thriving. Because businesses that start in places like Oxford can't stay there. We don't have enough space for the labs or whatever, the spin-outs, and very often they will come here. And what I think makes me so upset is the reason I got into politics in the first place, I was a teacher before I was an MP, is that when I visit places in my area and ask people where they're from, sometimes they are from places like Doncaster, and ask them why did they go, and they said there just wasn't the opportunity here. They wanted to stay. They wanted to stay and raise their children near their grandparents. They wanted to stay in their community, but when it came to that job that was going to get them on the ladder and get them ahead in life, they couldn't find it here.
So what's the Lib Dem policy on this?
So what we have always spoken about is finding a way to get local communities the money and the power that they need to be able to do this work. Local government has been consistently underfunded over the last 10 years. I'm a great believer that if you vote for a local council, actually you guys and your councillors know very well how to revitalise your high street. What works for you is not going to work for Abingdon near me. We've got to make sure that local communities are given that power, and that power is evenly distributed. And examples of that is, for example, HS2. I think, actually, it was a mistake to cut it, but actually I would have started in the north and gone south. You start the investment there, you don't stop it.
Okay. Let me just say a couple of points we all just want to move on. The woman at the very back in the glasses.
There's this notion of brain drain that we're taught very early on. I was taught in GCSE geography that we are to, or we're expected to, if you're educated and want to achieve what is deemed as something, you are to move out of your hometown. I love it here, I want to stay here, I don't want to be pitied. I don't want it to, oh, when I come up here, oh, is this, I want it to be thriving. I'm educated, I'm clever, and I care about this place. And there are so many like me. I don't want to be a statistic that is pitied or expected to move down south. I don't want to.
Right. Okay. The man here in the glass and dark sweater.
Right. So, for me, levelling up starts at the local area. We've had South Yorkshire Mayor, Oliver Coppard, who's now got 1.455 billion from City Regional Transport Settlement Fund, and the first thing he did was went out and bought some more trams, £500 million. And what we have seen now is a localised version of trickle-down economics. Spend in Sheffield goes down to Doncaster. And what we've had now is they claim what powers? And then they go in the Parliament, Secretary of State, Mark Harper, he says, yes, we've met with Oliver Coppard. Oliver Coppard on Radio Sheffield says, no, we haven't. So the three things that really affect us are the funding element. Oliver keeps saying, I can't extract this funding. It's 2027 for Crest. And then we've got the localised issue in transport infrastructure, where Peel have been allowed to take an airport twice, once in Teesside, once in Doncaster. And then we've got devolution isn't working for us. The two mayors, Oliver Coppard and Ros Jones, are not giving us the money. They prefer to spend it on a business case that is returning lower than HS2, and that's the trams.
OK, well, obviously, they're not here to defend themselves, but I hear what you have to say. I'm going to move on and take another question. Before I do, I want to say that Question Time is in Petersfield in Hampshire next week, and then our last programme for Christmas, the week after, is in Kelso on the Scottish border. So if you'd like to be in the audience of either one, go to the Question Time website and apply there. And incidentally, when we're in your local area, if you want pictures of your local area to appear here, do send them in. The instructions are on the Question Time website. And then all our locations up until, I think it's until January, are on our website too. So, for example, after Christmas, we're coming back to Oxford on January the 11th, I think it is. So feel free to apply for that now if you'd like to. OK, our second question. There's a lot of questions about this as well. Wai Ming Yao, where are you? Oh, that's you. Oh, I didn't know that. OK. Well, we're getting two bites of the cherry with you then.
Yes. So my question is, should we allow cheap imported labour to fill the jobs that Britain do not want, or should there be a salary floor of £40,000 for each immigrant?
So a minimal level that they have to be able to earn before they can come here. OK, and that's an idea that's come from Suella Braverman, I think, the former Home Secretary. Steve, obviously there's been a lot this week and last week about migration figures. Last year there were record levels of net migration figures. This year they're still very high. Should we allow cheap imported labour to fill the jobs Britain's doing?
Well, when this government was elected in December 2019, they said that they would get immigration numbers down and give British people back control of our borders. Since then, immigration has trebled. It's gone up threefold. So this government has shown that they are incapable of managing immigration in the way that they said. And, I mean, there are so many ways that they're getting this wrong. They're spending £8 million a day on asylum hotels. That's £3 billion of your money every year, when they could be using that money instead to fund more people to work in the Home Office and process the applications, and then remove people who don't have the right to stay and properly support people who do have the right to stay. But instead, these people are locked up at immense public expense.
But the question, Steve, is should we allow cheap imported labour to fill the jobs that Britons don't want?
We need to look at the minimum employment threshold for sure, but there's another employment-related element that I simply cannot understand. I'm baffled why the government continues with this, which is that they offer a 20% wage discount to employers to recruit people in certain sectors from abroad, rather than training up a British person to do that job in the UK. And that's jobs like engineering, skilled construction workers. 20% less for an employer to go and find somebody from abroad, bring them in here when you could have trained up somebody from the British workforce who is not working. And we know there are several million people who would like to work but are currently not working, partly because their NHS is broken as well. And they are basically bringing people in instead of training up British people to do the jobs. That is absolutely wrong. That isn't a government that wants to deal with immigration. That is a government that absolutely doesn't care. And they sit in Parliament and they pass law after law after law, all of which has no effect whatsoever. It's a kind of a performative government pretending that they want to deal with this issue. They are too chaotic to do it, and they're too out of touch to understand that what British people really want is training for the good jobs of the future. Don't prioritise foreign workers over British workers that could do the job here.
So, Steve, let me ask you, because this is something Labour said, as you're saying now, about getting rid of that discount, that 20% discount for workers who come in, and I'm sure many people can see the logic of that. When it comes to to sectors that are really under strain financially, like, say, the care sector, if care workers are paid more, you can imagine hearing care homes around the country saying, well, we just can't afford that. We can't afford to pay the people 20% more. So what are they supposed to do?
Well, I mean, again, this is where the government's lost control of the economy, because if the government was investing in training up people to do those jobs, then you wouldn't need to be taking people from other countries. And quite often, it's developing countries where those people could make a real contribution, who are brought here instead to do the jobs where British people have not been trained up to do it.
But until those people have been trained up, you can imagine the care sector saying, we just can't cope with that.
Well, until people are trained up, then of course you do. But they've had 14 years. You'd think within that period they might have found the wherewithal to start to direct money into skills training for where we have job vacancies, but they don't do it.
Andrew.
Well, the question was, should you raise, in a sense, the wage threshold for jobs for people coming in? And you could do that, and it's been proposed. You could do it, but if you do it, people will die in the care homes. Nobody's going to look after your granny. Simple as that. You're going to run out of labour very quickly to do that, because most people coming in to work now in this country are coming in to work in the NHS and in the care homes, a third of them. You're right. Politicians have found it much easier simply to bring workers in from abroad than do the heavy lifting of getting those who are already in this country but not working back to work. There are 2.8 million people on sickness benefit at the moment. Some of them obviously seriously sick, but not all. And that figure is going to rise, even after the government's changes, to 3.4 million by the end of the decade. Now, if you did some heavy work, and it takes a lot of work, and it's not easy, and you have to identify those who are not capable of working, and they have to stay on sickness benefit, and those that could work, you need to get them back into the labour force. There are 3,000 people a day now come to work in this country. There are 4,000 people a day sign up for sickness benefit on that, and you need to do the welfare reform. Now, Labour doesn't even talk about this. You have no plans for welfare reform at all to bring these people back in to the labour force. The government's made, of course, a complete horlicks of it. But you're going to be the next government, and we have no idea what you're going to do. And the headline figures are more scary than they need be. First of all, a lot of these people are coming in to do proper jobs and to work. The biggest number are students. And they're coming to this country because we have the finest universities in the world after America. It actually counts on the national balance sheet as an export. That's right. They bring in foreign currency to come in. There's not, you know, we have now about 8 universities in the top 30 in the world. The European Union doesn't have one, not one to do. So, you know, would you want to stop students coming to this country? Of course you wouldn't. Do you want to stop care workers? No, but we need to get stuck into our labour force. There's a huge chunk of people that we need to get back to work. And I don't think either Labour or Conservative are prepared to do the heavy lifting.
It's also
that
the
would
NHS.
require.
There's 7.8 million people on the NHS waiting lists. There are people that want to get back to work who can't get to see a doctor or go to a hospital, and that's got worse this
So
month.
how much extra are you going to spend on the NHS?
Well, if you close the non-dom loophole, you can raise enough money to get the existing workforce to work overtime on weekends and in the evenings, and you can reduce it by $2 million a year.
Hang on, so the
non-dom 1.5 billion.
The non-dom loophole, you're estimating would raise, I think, 3.6 billion. Some of it you've already committed.
But a proportion of it.
Well, some of it you've already committed to other things.
But a proportion of it goes on this, and it has been committed to.
But Andrew, you will have
If you could get those waiting lists down, you'd get people back to work.
Andrew, when you were talking about getting people into work, you will have remembered when I was working with Ian Duncan Smith, we absolutely brought in universal credit, and towards the end we had record rates in employment. 1,000 more people each and every day were getting to work. So we did do that.
And then you gave up.
You're still in government, Esther.
It is, but I think where these figures come from that Andrew's talking about has been what happened with 2 years of lockdown, what happened with people not going into work, what happened when their businesses were closing down, and people took early retirement, people haven't gone into work. And so we've got to begin that process again to get people back into work again, which was announced 2.5 billion to help them.
Your own official forecasts show the numbers rising to the end of the decade, not falling.
And
so
this is why they're starting that same work programme idea, the 2.5 billion to get people into work. But going back to the question, should there be cheap labour coming into this country? Absolutely not. I would have imagined one of the reasons I voted for Brexit, and the vast majority of people in Doncaster did, is because we didn't want open borders and people coming in from Europe as a cheaper wage and having our own people at home not working.
Yes, but now you've got people coming. Hang on a second. Now you've got people coming not from Europe. They're now coming from India, from other countries. What on earth has gone wrong?
What we've got illegal, which we know, migration, and we've got legal migration. No, we've got both, and we've got to deal with them both. We have had absolutely...
But this question is about legal migration, so let's stick to that for this question.
Because that's the biggest number, and absolutely right. And we've got to bring that down. The government said we've absolutely got to bring that down. It has been a very difficult... It's been a very difficult year this year as we brought in people from Ukraine, people from Syria, people from Afghanistan. But we have got to do absolutely everything. The world is moving around.
Why don't you scrap the wage discount? There's a thing you could do. 20%
Labour, you voted 70 times against our illegal migration bills. You don't even want the Rwanda thing.
Hang on. Let's stop here, both of you, because there's a lot of hands up, and I can see that you want to get a word in edgeways, so let's make that happen. The man there in the stripy blue top there, yes.
Hello, it's really interesting, Esther, that you've brought up Brexit. The current migration levels, in my opinion, are the crowning failure of Brexit, as indeed is the total and utter lack of levelling up, which is what we've just done. If we look at rejoining the EU, compare the EU Social Fund to what Doncaster gets from Alexander Boris to Feffel Kamal Johnson's total fantasy levelling up, there is a 43% reduction. Migration to this country, legal, by the way, all these human beings are legal. There is no such thing as an illegal human being. That has gone up threefold since Brexit. When are we going to accept it was an error, and step by step we need to work towards an eventual rejoin? Let's stop using phrases like closer ties with the EU. Let's put a roadmap there.
OK.
No, absolutely not.
Man there in the shirt. I can't see what colour it is, sorry. Yes.
Hi. I was also interested, Esther, at what you'd said. The government seems to keep going back to these unavoidable and unpredictable events that have happened. So we all know that COVID, we didn't expect it in its form that it came. But as a government, you should be prepared for crisis that comes through, and what are we going to do about it? It's the same. I'm an operational manager at the NHS. If something goes wrong in my department, I have to be answerable for why we weren't prepared. And I feel like there's been a lot of instances. The Russia-Ukraine war, we know how volatile that area is. You can't now say that fuel has gone up significantly, and how were we ever going to know that was going to happen? Everyone knew how volatile Russia was. Why is the government so unprepared at all of these events?
OK. Woman at the back there in the cream top, yeah.
I think it's quite interesting how you mentioned a £40,000 threshold when we can't even pay our junior doctors that.
Exactly that.
Yeah. Man here in the glasses.
As somebody that had to use the NHS back in June because I was rushed into hospital with sepsis, most of the people that I came across in A&E were of foreign descent. And without them, I mean, the waiting time was long enough as it was because it was a Monday night, and that's apparently the busiest night. But the waiting times as it was were ridiculous for something as serious as that, where you've got hours. I don't think there's enough sepsis awareness out there, but that's a different story altogether. But it's like Andrew said, if you didn't have the immigrants in the NHS, in the care sector, people would just be dying because there's nobody there to look after them. It's as simple as that.
We shouldn't need to bring cheap labour into this country. We should be paying the people who are working in this country a decent living wage to live on. We have had, for years, uncertainty within employment. It's horrific for people to try and manage their lives like that. And you're absolutely right. We should be paying them a decent wage to be in this country in the first place. I mean, and it's also just a thought, but maybe we could, utilise the people who are coming into this country, immigrants or asylum seekers, who have a huge amount of skills as well amongst them. And if there was some sort of process system where we could go through them and process them in time, we could utilise, lots of them have medical skills as well, use those people who are already here to do that, to do those jobs.
Layla, what is the Lib Dem policy on this?
On social care and getting...
No, not on social care, but on immigration we're talking about.
On immigration, well, to answer the question specifically, should we be raising the thresholds and all of that? We want to see the exact right number of people coming in that we need to fuel our economy. There is no industrial strategy. There is no plan. As far as I can see, there is no competence in this government left anymore at all. They have completely lost control. And I agree with the thrust of where a lot of this conversation has gone so far, that we need to be looking at the NHS and social care. The Liberal Democrat policy on this is that we need a social care living wage, which is £2 more than the living wage that we currently have. And the reason for that is because we realise that if you want to get people through the NHS faster, you need to unclog social care. We need to get people wanting to work in social care, and that's not happening. And you know what? I think we should go further. For those people who are here working in our social care and our NHS, can we just say thank you to them for a minute? Because they are doing an incredible job.
So the numbers this year, I mean, there's a huge margin of error, but net migration was 672,000 this year. It could go as high... hang on one second. It could go up, I think, as high as 900,000 or down as low as 500,000. We'll find out for sure next year. If you're saying the Lib Dem policy is to have as many migrants as the economy needs, presume you think that number is right, then, 670. Most of them come for jobs.
We are certainly not in charge of the Home Office. The Home Office is so incompetent.
But do you think, does that number feel too high to you as a Lib Dem?
You know what I want to see? I want to see public services that work. I want to see businesses
but can you
that
ask,
have the right people.
That's not answering the question.
I'm not. No,
do you think that number is too high? Labour think it's too high?
The Liberal
government thinks
policy,
it's too high? Do you think it's too high?
We don't think an arbitrary number is helpful. We want to see the exact number of people that we need, and that will change year on year. It will change quarter on quarter. If we
but these people have some of these are students, of course.
Yeah.
But otherwise, these people have come for jobs.
Well,
so presumably you think this number is about
100,000 of those people, and this is another thing that is in these figures, and I think should be celebrated. 100,000 people in these figures are 60-odd thousand that came over in the Homes for Ukraine scheme. I was proud to host one in my own house. This was British people opening their hearts and homes to refugees from somewhere, and we should be proud of that number.
OK, but just to be clear...
No, let me finish, please. And 40,000 were people coming over from Hong Kong who were escaping from the regime in China.
But just to be clear, you've got Labour
and
the Conservatives both saying they think the number is too high. The Lib Dems are not saying either way. Is that right?
No, because the number's going to change all the time.
I just want to be clear what your position is. OK, I'm going to move on and take another question. Becky Marshall, where are you sitting? There you go. Let's have your question.
Is it time for the UK government to join others around the world in calling for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza?
So, as things stand, unless it has changed while we are on air, there is a truce until tomorrow morning. And that's as far as we've got. Layla, I'm going to come to you, obviously, because you have extended family in Gaza. You've talked about that.
I've been dreading this question
before.
I've been.
Well, look, I'm not in any sense trying to put you on the spot here.
No, I know,
or put you in a difficult position. I mean, if nothing else, can you tell us what the situation is with your family in Gaza?
Of course, no, but this is an important. I'm dreading it because every time I talk about it, it's
emotional.
I can't begin to describe what it's like, and the reason why. And I'm also Foreign Affairs spoke, so yes, it's deeply personal, but my professional and personal lives are completely one at the moment. And yes, to answer the question, because I think it needs direct answering, Liberal Democrats do think it is time for an immediate bilateral ceasefire. And the reason for that is because we need the killing to stop. This is a deep, horrific humanitarian crisis. It's already killed one member of my family, who, by the way, didn't die from a bomb. He died because he couldn't get access to medical help. They're in northern Gaza. We're Christian Palestinians. And he was dehydrated and old and frail, and they couldn't move from the north. Nowhere in Gaza is safe. And they died. And another one I've heard today, the update, is that the others are still there, and one is now really sick also because they're drinking contaminated water, because there was a choice made in the immediate aftermath of October the 7th by Israel to turn off the water. This isn't right. I'm not a lawyer. People are talking about international law and all that. This just is not right. We need to stop this level of devastation. But we also need to be clear. Hamas need to be gone. They need to be gone from Gaza. There is no future for the Palestinian state.
But how do you get rid of them, Layla?
And we also need a two-state solution so that the dignity for Palestinians and security for Palestinians and Israelis is guaranteed. Now, how do you do that? Well, first of all, I'll point out the political leadership of Hamas is not in Gaza. They are in five-star hotels in Qatar. Yeah. If you want to achieve this lasting peace, you do have to get rid of them, absolutely. But there is no military solution to this. We need to understand this now. The other thing you have to understand about Hamas is that they are as much an idea as they are an organisation. They are terrorists. They absolutely are terrorists. And if you want to get rid of an idea, the answer to that is you replace it with a better one. You replace it with hope. Okay. And all of you who are looking at the TV screens and at what are happening and saying to yourselves, this isn't right and we don't want this anymore, bear in mind, this has affected 4 generations of my family. This is not new. This has been happening in some form or another for 75 years. And just like in Northern Ireland, there came a point where the whole world, driven primarily by good people like yourselves, said, actually, this is not right. We need to now push our politicians. This is going to be hard. This is going to be one of the hardest things that politicians around the world have had to do in a very long time. But I'll tell you this, if we don't try, then we can guarantee we are going to see something like this happen over and over and over again. And I don't know about you, but I've had enough.
Okay. Esther, the government has been in lockstep, as indeed have Labour, with America, saying, you know, that the time was not right for a ceasefire. I mean, Joe Biden is saying now, extending the truce is America's goal, to keep this pause going beyond tomorrow. Is the government's position changing along with that?
Well, I think we are all pleased there is a pause. We're pleased that hostages are being handed over. We're pleased that humanitarian aid is getting
not
into
to northern Gaza.
Not
to my family. I just need to point that out. It's not getting to everywhere at all.
And you'll be closer to that than I am. But we need to make sure that aid is going in and that people can leave.
But Israel is saying at the moment, as I say, as we're broadcasting now, it could change, that they're going to start fighting again tomorrow. Now, America seems to be shifting its position, saying, actually, that's not what we want to see. Are you shifting your position?
We've called for, which there needs to be, these breaks, these
we've
stops.
got one of those. I'm talking about from tomorrow.
And it's extended. But I think people as well need to look at the situation, and you can't just have a one-sided ceasefire. Hamas has got to surrender. The hostages have got to go free. And people also need to realise that Israel does have the right to defend itself. What happened there were the worst terrorist attacks Israel had ever had. What they did, the killing, the butchering of people, the taking of children. Hamas has done absolutely terrible things to its own people as well. They will have known there would have been a retaliation by the Israelis for what they did, and they've put their own people in harm's way by using their own civilians to protect the Hamas fighters and to protect their warring infrastructure. It is absolutely awful.
Offensive this is.
Awful.
Can I just say, please, can I say, my family have nothing to do with Hamas. Nothing. The family member of mine who died worked for the UN. His job was he was an engineer and he taught people how to fish. The idea that Hamas and going after Hamas allows collateral damage to the extent that we've seen in the Palestinian, innocent civilian Palestinian population as we've seen. And may I just say, I am as angry about that as I am about those hostages. Do you know some of those hostages were people who, there was an 85-year-old woman who had survived the Holocaust, who was in the peace camp. She was talking about the oppression that Palestinians feel. There is something about this that makes people want to pick sides. Can I just point out?
It's awful on all sides.
The government has picked a side, and it feels that way to the Palestinian people. But you don't have to pick a side. You can stand with Israel and care about innocent civilians in Palestine. You can stand with Palestine and want the hostages and Hamas
how
gone.
are we going
At
to
the
get
moment,
Hamas
the government
to
is not
surrender?
saying that. They're saying pick a side, and I disagree.
OK, all right.
How do we
Zoe,
get Hamas to surrender?
Yeah, the pictures that we are seeing in the news are just absolutely horrific and abhorrent, and more than any other conflict of our recent time, this one seems to be affecting children and the elderly and the completely innocent in such an awful way. And I completely agree with you, Layla. You know, it's very odd to have to pick a side in this situation when innocent people are being killed left, right and centre. None of this is right. Hamas have been in power for, what, 14 years? They were, you know, many of the people who are being killed in Gaza at the moment have never voted for them. It's not their choice. It's not what they want. It's not what any of us want watching it on the television. We want the killing to stop on both sides. How you do that is incredibly complicated.
OK, let's hear a bit from ours. Yes, the one about the blonde hair, yeah.
Yeah, Esther, I find it so upsetting hearing you say that about Israel has the right to defend itself. Of course it has the right to defend itself. Nobody's going to say what Hamas did was ever acceptable or OK. But nor is going in the way that Israel have gone in now, with impunity, complete impunity, from the US and from the UK, starving out children, the amount of children and women that have died in this conflict, there are war crimes that are happening. And our governments, it feels like they are siding, you know, with Israel. You're right, we should not be picking sides in this, but absolutely, what has Israel got over the UK and the US that is allowing this to happen? Because it's horrendous.
The man a little bit further forward, yeah. Yes, you, sir.
8,000 children. 8,000 children dead. 1.5 million people displaced from the north to the south in one of the most densely congested regions of the world. This is not proportionate whatsoever, and no conflict of this sort has ever resulted in the long-term benefit of a nation. There has to be a plan for the day after, and at the moment that's not taking place whatsoever.
OK, let me take one final point from the man over there in the glasses, yeah.
Hi. You know, I hear this a lot on people like you guys talking about it, that Israel has the right to defend. And never I have heard this question, where is the right of the Palestinian to defend? Why is the Palestinian not have that right to defend? Why is our government standing behind Israel? And Hamas, I believe that they are a terrorist organization. So is IDF. But full support is given to them. You guys fund
and you're calling the Israeli Defence Force,
yes,
their national army, you're calling it a terrorist organisation.
They are.
I mean, there are a lot of people who take great offence at that.
Because they will do. They are doing the exactly same thing.
What, as Hamas abducting hostages?
If you look at the proportion of the people who got killed on the 7th, for the last 75 years, I do not defend Hamas. I am not part of them. I will never, ever defend any person killing anybody. But what I hear is the amount, the way you guys also describe it. Guardian only a week ago described the Israeli hostages released, which Israeli children released from this truce, but Palestinian people under the age of 18 released. Mm-hmm. That was how you describe it. This is exactly where I come back, is that the Palestinian are people. Okay. They have the right to defend, or they have a right to get a second state.
The point you're making very clear is you think there's a double standard there.
Double standard.
Andrew.
You know, Western governments, British government, whatever, they can call for a ceasefire if they want, and they may get one for a short while, but it won't make any difference. There is no military solution to this, and there is no political solution either. The two-state scenario is dead. I used to support it. It's dead. And if it wasn't dead, it died on May the 7th. The Arab states don't even want a two-state solution.
What's the alternative?
There is no alternative. That's the problem. Not every problem has a solution. Sometimes things just have to play out in the most horrific way. The Palestinians in Gaza elected Hamas in 2005. Hamas then abandoned elections, and there's not been one since. The Hamas is already regrouping in the south. The leadership has said that we can't wait to do October the 7th again. We'll try it again the moment we have the guns and the arm to do so. If there were elections in the West Bank, Hamas would now win.
That's not.
Which is why. Oh, I've seen it, and it is why. It's why there are no elections. There can be no two-state solution when you've got Hamas in control of Gaza, a terrorist organisation, and a corrupt gerontocracy of the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank.
But Andrew, we cannot give up hope.
It is. Well, sometimes there is no hope. You know, at 7:40 this morning, at a bus stop in Jerusalem, 3 people were gunned down by 2 Hamas terrorists. This is during a ceasefire. Pause. 3 were. Hold on. 3 were gunned down. Fortunately, there was an off-duty IDF soldier who was armed, and he took the 2 Hamas terrorists out. They were armed with enough to go on a massive killing spree if they hadn't been shot. We learned today that the young autistic girl who was taken hostage was too much trouble for Hamas. Too much trouble. The one that J.K. Rowling, because she loved Harry Potter, the one that J.K. Rowling tried to intervene and ask for mercy for, they killed her. We learned that a young girl with cerebral palsy on a wheelchair was too much trouble as well, particularly down the tunnels. They killed her. Yeah. How you can deal or have a political solution with that when the purpose of Hamas is the destruction of Israel. Israel is often its own worst enemy, and we've seen that. I understand that. I see that. But when you're up against basically a Nazi-type regime that is out to destroy you because you're Jewish, that's why they want to destroy you.
So the question, Andrew, is
how can you deal with people like that?
OK, Andrew, hang on a sec. The question, is it time to call for a permanent ceasefire?
Yeah, as I said, you can call if you want, but there won't be one.
OK. Steve?
Well, I mean, what we all want, what everyone wants, is for this horrific war to end. I'll never accept that you have to abandon hope. Any problem on this earth that is created by human beings can be fixed by human beings with the right will to get in there and sort that out. Any problem created by human beings can be fixed by human beings. We cannot give up hope for the sake of the Israelis and the Palestinians. We can't give up hope. Now, I think where we've seen some hope is in this truce, this cessation of the fighting that has lasted these past few days and has been extended several times. That is a hopeful sign. And I don't forget, as others in the audience have said...
And are you calling for it to be extended now as Labour?
Well, I hope there will be an extension of it for as long as it can possibly be extended.
Is that the official position?
No one in the room here, no one has forgotten how this started, which was on October the 7th, that horrific incursion by Hamas terrorists into Israel, the biggest slaughter of Jewish people since the Holocaust. That's what started this. Everyone has condemned that, and that is absolutely right. Today, the leader of Hamas, one of the senior leaders, Yahya Sinwar, said that October the 7th was just a rehearsal. That is what that man said, the leader of the Hamas terrorists.
See, no one here is defending Hamas.
No one.
So there's no question, I think, among everyone here, that what Hamas did was, A, unspeakable and terrible, and that they're an organisation that people want to see the back of.
The problem we've got
but beyond that, where do we go from here?
For as long as Hamas are saying that if they get the chance, they will do it again, Israel will keep going in to try and remove their capability to get in and do the things they are saying they're doing. Now, we're at the moment of hope. I fully appreciate that you've got a personal connection with this, and I don't want to talk over you, but where there is a moment of hope is in that pause that has allowed more aid in, has stopped the bombing of Gaza, stopped the killing of people. And Israel's right to defend itself cannot mean a blank cheque. That has been extended for a number of days so far. In that space, there is the opportunity for more conversation on both sides and pressure from the outside world to stop it. Now, I think there's a vindication in this of the position taken by President Biden and others in the Western world who did not say to Israel, you do not have the right to defend yourself, which is what some have said. By getting Israel's ear, they have listened and there has been this pause. What we need to do now is seize that pause and use that moment to extend it for as long as we possibly can, because the only solution to this problem cannot be military, because everyone will end up dead. It can only be possible. It's only possible. It's only possible through a political solution. And we have to have the space to start having those conversations to allow that permanent peace.
What we are finding here is are two sets of narratives, right? You've got on the one hand, Hamas saying these horrific things, and I've said very clearly they need to be gone. But on the other side, you've also got ministers, senior ministers, finance ministers, interior ministers in Netanyahu's government saying that they're going to drop nuclear bombs on Gaza. The way I see this is this, and Andrew, I have hope, and I would put it to you that it's more important that the Palestinians and the Israelis have hope than you do. We have to solve this. And the way we solve it is we move away from a narrative of the extremes, which is where we are now, of people fighting to raise their rhetoric one above the other. These men who have decided that they're going to base their careers on it. It's now in Netanyahu's interest to keep this going, and it's certainly in Hamas's interest not to be out. And there are people in the world who do have influence, and we've seen that because we've got this truce, and it is being extended slowly, slowly. If Britain decided to back a bilateral is important, ceasefire, and then encouraged America, we have a special relationship, let's use it, and encourage America to do it, we might well start that process. But we have to know where we're going to end up. Ceasefire is not peace, and peace is not just the absence of war. If we want to not see this again, we need to get to the point where both peoples feel the absence of fear. Okay. That is how we get to peace, and we have to start now.
Woman there in the pink shirt and the glasses,
Yes. Andrew, I think you're the most rational person there on the stage right now talking about the situation in Gaza and Israel. But my question is towards all of you guys. Do you think it's time... I don't think Britain or the US have a good track record about foreign relations around the world, e.g. Syria, and weapons of mass destructions. Do you think it's time to absolve our responsibilities and duties around the world, and to just not be involved in the Middle East crisis, just to stop being involved in their country's policies and their country's duties, and to just absolve our duties inside their countries?
So just say, over to you.
Yeah, over to you.
Sort it out.
Yeah, sort it out.
OK. I'll come back to one of you two if you answer that. Yes, there's a woman here, second row back. Yes. Let's get a microphone to you. Yeah.
Hi. Based on that note, well, I'm wondering, I mean, technically, I would normally disagree with what the lady behind me just said, but I think when our Prime Minister is promoting local coffee shops on his Instagram and social medias to millions of people when stuff like this is going on, we might as well, as Britain, and as a Palestinian, by the way, but as Britain, we might as well actually stand back, because I don't think there's enough being done from our politicians that do have the platform.
So, Andrew, given that you think there's no hope, do you agree with that?
For the foreseeable future. I mean, there's always hope in the longer term.
But do you agree with the young woman there to think, well, actually, there is no hope, so a plague on all your houses?
I mean, I agree with the lady in the audience in that Britain should not overestimate its influence in this situation. It really doesn't have very much at all. Which probably doesn't matter because we don't know what to do either. The problem I have with this is if you're going to try to move to some kind of peace process, and I've covered many peace processes, and by the way, the Palestinians had opportunities for what now looks like a wonderful peace agreement. At one stage, you could have all of Gaza and 90% of the West Bank.
You're talking about the Oslo Accords?
Yeah, okay. And they turned it down.
I'll have to ask you quite quick, because we're nearly out of time.
But the problem is, it takes two to tango. And at the moment, who are you going to talk to in Gaza? Who are you going to talk? Because I tell you this, if anybody who's not Hamas talks to us, talks to the Israelis, they'll be thrown off the nearest highest building the moment Hamas gets a hold of them. It's an impossible situation for people of goodwill in Gaza to show any political power at all.
So are you OK with what's happening? I mean, this is...
obviously I'm OK.
No,
the killing is just wonderful. What a stupid question to ask me.
Excuse me.
Of course I'm not OK with it. It's horrific. It's horrific.
Well, then what,
but I'm trying
what are you offering?
I'm trying to point to the realpolitik of the situation.
Okay. Hang on. I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to stop you, because we are actually over time, so forgive me. This won't be the only time that...
healthcare system?
Hang on. We're talking about Gaza. This is not going to be... And Israel. This will not be the last time we come to this subject. I know you want to say more, Layla, forgive me, but we are out of time.
I'm just in shock.
I just want to say... We'll come back to this subject. Our hour is up. Thank you very much to the panel. Thank you to all of you for coming here and being part of our audience. It's been great to see you. And, of course, thank you to you at home for watching. And remember, as always, If after the 10 o'clock news is too late for you, we're on iPlayer at 8 o'clock. But from Question Time for this week, bye-bye.